Hello and welcome back to part 2 of 5 of the Platform App Builder exam prep series. Today we're going to go through the data modeling and management section of the exam, which is going to take up 22% of the exam. As always, we're going to go through the bullet points found in the Trailhead study guide, give real life examples so you feel confident and comfortable in this section of the exam. Let's get into it. First bullet point is, given a scenario, determine the appropriate data model. In order to do this, we're going to talk through and talk about some examples of when to use custom versus standard objects and different relationships between these objects and what you need to establish to make sure that you have the right data model for whatever business need that may come up. So to start that discussion, we want to talk about standard versus custom objects. Now, there's plenty of resources out there regarding standard versus custom objects, but what's important to know is that you understand the core standard objects to know if your scenario calls for maybe extending some of those custom objects functionality with fields or the need to build a custom object. When you come across scenarios, likely they will have very specific requirements, and they may be talking about things that are outside of your standard accounts or contacts or leads or opportunities, right? Campaigns. It's going to be talking about very specific business needs that will be named, such as maybe a interview candidate or a special project. You know, these are items and data points that are going to live outside of your standard objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually jump into a developer org and just talk through very simply the standard objects, and then again, scenarios you may look for to have that requirement for building custom objects. And then we'll build a custom object and do a little bit of relationship building within our data model. So I'm going to jump into a developer org here. Here I am in just a free developer org. Here's the home page. And really simply, we want to talk about the standard objects. And a lot of the standard objects that you're going to see are up on this first banner here that I just want to talk through. Again, if you're not familiar with how standard objects are set up or what they are, highly recommend that you get into a developer org and just look at what is already in Salesforce. These are going to be your standard objects. But to talk about the relationships of standard objects, right, we're going to have at the most common level is going to be the account. The account is the company, right? The companies that you have within your Salesforce are going to be the account. Now, on your accounts, you're going to have related individuals who work at that company, also known as contacts. So you have the accounts, you have the contacts, those individuals who work at the company, and related to accounts, you may have opportunities, right? These are potential deals, potential opportunities to do business with these companies or individuals, contacts, who work at these companies. So those are kind of your big three, right? You have the accounts, contacts, opportunities. These really should account for most of the records within Salesforce, as these are really tied very well into standard functionality in Salesforce. Outside of that, the ones that I will mention here for standard objects to be aware of really are going to be your leads, which are individuals who are not quite qualified. You haven't really secured if they're a part of a legitimate company or not. So those are going to be leads. Those are before you get to accounts and contacts. Within there, you also have a few different marketing and product objects that I just want to mention here quickly. You're going to have the campaigns, which are marketing campaigns, which allow you to track marketing interactions, marketing work with leads and contacts. So campaigns allow you to really track and enroll contacts and leads, whether it was a webinar or an in-person event, maybe a different email campaign. That's going to be your campaigns. The other main object I want to talk about are going to be products. Products are what you can actually add to an opportunity so that you can actually have better pricing models, and they're standard out of the box objects or standard objects in Salesforce. Those are going to be your products. So there are other objects that you want to be familiar with, but these are really the core ones. If you see anything that is talking about specific projects or applicants. You'll see scenarios on the test where they have very specific call outs of business needs that are going to really sit outside the purview of these standard objects. So first, when you're talking about scenarios and data modeling, you need to establish, okay, does this require custom object setup, or can I use standard objects here? Later on in this video, we're going to talk about the schema builder to help you visualize the different object relationships. I've also covered this on prior videos on the associate exam, but again, be familiar with standard objects, your data model, and then when you need these custom objects in these scenarios. So what I'd like to do is build a custom object that we're going to use throughout this video. And as we build this custom object, talk through a scenario, and then we're going to get into relationships. We're going to talk about how you set up your data model and how you can relate these objects one to another. So in my developer org, I'm going to go over into the object manager, and I'm going to go ahead and create a custom object. So I'm going to do that here in the object manager. And now to create a custom object, let's say, for example, I have a business need that's going to be talking about specific projects. These aren't opportunities. These are actual projects that I have contacts at these accounts that they need access to. So we're going to have projects, and we actually want to talk about project applicants and maybe even applications. So this is something that's outside of the standard infrastructure of Salesforce, and so we want to build it out custom. So I'm going to start with building a projects object. So here I am again in the object manager, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create these here from the object manager. So here I am on create. I'm going to create this object, or you can create it from a spreadsheet. I'm just going to create it here in the Salesforce UI. And what I want to do is create a project object. And plural is projects. And here we have really what we want the record names. I want it as a project name. I want it to be text. I don't want it to be auto-numbered. I want to actually have names for these. And here is where we can optionally allow for reports, activities, track field history, and chatter groups. And I want to make sure that it's deployed to allow us to see this and search and actually create records here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. Here I am on my custom object, this project object. And so what I want to do is I want to create some relationships as we talk about a data model. A data model are the objects that you have in place as well as how they relate to one another. I explained a little bit of the standard data model, talking about how accounts can be related to contacts and opportunities. And I want to continue to build on that model with this project object. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I want to create a new field. As you see here, the only fields I have on this custom object are these system fields that are going to be created by, last modified, owner, and the project name. This project is a standalone object right now. It's not connected to any other objects. But for my data model, I want the project to be able to relate to contacts because I want contacts in my system to be able to have projects assigned to them. So by doing that, I'm going to hit new here. And what I want to do here is, if you see here, these are relationship fields that we see here. What I want to do is I want to determine, okay, what type of relationship do I want to have? And now there's great resources here looking at what these mean. These are very important to be aware of. So please, in a developer org, go in and look to build these relationship fields and read through what you see here, the difference between lookup relationships and master detail relationships, how they connect, how they relate to objects. In this particular case, because projects, they can have maybe potentially multiple contacts attached to them. What I want to do is, projects may not have contacts at the time or may have several contacts. So I want to have a lookup relationship. And we'll talk about the differences between these fields in just a moment. But I want to create one just to show you what it looks like to create. So here I want to have this as a lookup relationship. And so I'm going to hit next here. And I want to say, okay, what is this going to be related to? What object is this related to? So I want to, as I said before, I want to relate this to a contact. So again, this is a field that's going to allow the project to be related to the contact. I'm going to hit next here. And I'm going to I'll put contact name on this. And this is what it's going to be, projects. This is what it's going to be listed as on the related list here. But here's some other important things. Here we have, I can make this lookup relationship required. So anytime, whenever a project is created, I can require this field. I can also, if the lookup relationship is deleted, right? If this contact is deleted, what do I do to the project? In this case, I can clear out this value, or I cannot even allow the deletion of the contact that's part of a lookup relationship. Very important settings here. Make sure you're familiar with, build a few out, and really play around with the different settings here on what to do if a record is deleted. And then also, I want to make sure that I allow, I can add this to existing custom reports, which we'll talk about reports in a little bit as well. But from there, I'm going to hit next. And now we'll see that I now have this contact lookup on a project. So now that I want to create some project records, I'm going to go back into Salesforce, but you'll notice here, this is a very quick step and important to note, is that I don't have the project listed in my navigation bar, and I actually can't pull up a project in the app launcher. And so what I need to do here is actually create a tab for this object. So if I go here on the home page and I type in tabs, what I want to do is again create a tab to allow Salesforce to pull the project object into my navigation. So what I'm going to do here is I want to create a custom object tab. This is very common scenarios where if you build out an object but you can't find it right after you built it, you can't create records. It's because you haven't created a tab for it yet. So I've selected my object. I need to give it, let's give it a building block. And just like that, I can hit next, make sure that these tabs are visible, and include it in all of the apps there. So now that I've created that custom tab, I'm going to refresh here. And now we'll see, if I go under more here are my projects, right? And so here I want to create a project and show you, again, where's that contact name? So here is just the project name. This is a test project. And here is my new contact lookup. This allows me to look up into contacts to add them to the project. So what's really a good way of remembering this as you look through Salesforce are these are fields that you can actually click to look into the related object. So if I hover over this lookup relationship, this contact name, I can see the information of this related contact. And I can even click into it and go to the Avery James contact right here. So this is great. This lookup relationships, again, allows you to look into the related object, the related record. And now I have that relationship to look up between the two. The project can look up and look into the contact because I have this field here. And again, because it's a lookup relationship, I could have no contact looking it up, or I can have that Ashley James being looked up to the contact. So that very quickly is what the lookup relationship allows you to do. It allows you to connect somewhat loosely a project to a contact. And that's what I needed for my data model. I need to make sure that there's a project object because contacts are able to be listed on projects. And so I created that lookup relationship between the project object and the contact. Now what I want to do is show what would happen if I tried to go through this process and create a master detail relationship right now. So I have the one project record here in this test project that's related to Ashley James, but I want to try and, I already have records, but I want to go ahead and create a master detail relationship. And I'm going to try and create it between the project and the contact and walk you through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and create a master detail relationship. Really, lookups and master detail relationships are the two relationships that you need to be the most familiar with. What are the implications? What are the differences between these? There are a lot of great resources. Particularly, I have one here pulled up on the Salesforce help articles. There are a few Salesforce help articles that are very good here. This one's called Considerations for Object Relationships. This is going to talk about the different limits on relationships. It goes into pretty good detail on the master detail relationships as well as the lookup relationship that you see here. So I'll link this one. This is a great resource. Be familiar with this when talking about relationships. And so we're going to talk through the master detail relationship here. I'm back here, Object Manager. I want to create a master detail relationship. I'm going to hit next here. Now what's very important here are the settings that we're going to have. I'm going to go ahead and try and relate it again to a contact. And we'll call this the contact, we'll call this the parent, right? Now we have different settings here. There are sharing settings. An important thing to note is that on master detail relationships, this field is always going to be created on the detail or the child record, we'll say. Because the project is the detail and the master is the contact, this is built on the project, important to note. And here, sharing settings are going to be really controlled by the master. What it says here, select the minimum level access on select the minimum access level required on the master record to create, edit, and delete related detail records. So here we have read only and read write. This allows you to have that access between these two records, these two objects. Another piece here is that when a record is deleted, if this contact, that master, is deleted, it typically will delete the child records. But there is a setting here, again, very important to note, that allows reparenting. This would say this project is allowed to change to another contact. It can be related to a different contact. If you don't have this selected, you will not be able to edit the contact related to the project once it's in there. So again, create some master detail relationships and make sure you're familiar with these settings. Now what I want to do is I actually want to try to create this relationship here and show you what is going to happen. So as I mentioned, I already have a record existing, but I want to go and try and create this master detail relationship that we just talked through with the contact. I'm going to go through, I want to add it to layouts. But now as I hit save, we're going to see this error pop up here. And what this is saying is because a master detail relationship is tying these two objects and two records so tightly, we can't have existing records or existing projects in the system. It's not going to allow us to create that master detail relationship. So this is a big difference between master detail relationships and lookup relationships. And so particularly as you think about data modeling, if you have existing records in the system, you're not going to be able to create this master detail relationship for the detail object. So wanted to talk you through the lookup relationship and master detail relationships. These will absolutely be on the exam and are very important to understand the differences. Now, a few other resources that I want to talk through as we just briefly talk on a few of the other objects that you're likely going to see on the test. There are a few resources, as I mentioned. This is a great resource, the Considerations for Object Relationships. Another one that you're going to want to be familiar with as you read through the master detail relationship and the lookup relationship is a many-to-many relationship, also known as a junction object, which is going to allow you to really have two different lookup relationships for an object. So in my case, let's say that I have projects, and let's say that I have applications for those projects. These are two custom objects, but there's also a many-to-many relationship. Many projects could be related with many applications, and so I may want a junction object in the middle called project applications. And so this is going to help you understand the many-to-many relationship or the junction object. So you'll want to make sure that you read through this many-to-many relationships here and be familiar of how access is given and just how you can set these up. Again, you can have two master detail relationships on that junction object, the project applications, that are tying the projects and the applications. So that's going to be many-to-many. Continuing on this, as I mentioned, it goes through the lookups and master details very well. The other one is talking about external objects. Be familiar with this. You may see a question on it, and just understand how you can have indirect and direct external relationships. There's also another one, the object relationships overview. Again, amazing help article that really goes through the differences, right? Master detail closely links objects together, whereas you may have a lookup, which just simply links two objects together. That's what we were trying to build out. This one also goes through many-to-many, which is that junction, as well as these external and indirect lookups. The last one that you may see, as you see here on this help article, is a hierarchical relationship, which is a special relationship for users. This is very similar to like a role hierarchy. In a user, you can allow employees, maybe entry-level employees, be related to their managers and managers. That's going to be a hierarchy relationship that is only available for the user object. So after reading through these help articles, make sure that you go into developer org and build out a data model. If you're struggling to come up with a scenario and you're not able to just think of, project applications, etc., there is a great Trailhead of creating object relationships. I'll have it linked, where it's going to go through a data model and help you understand, when do I need to create these relationships and what kind of relationships should it be? It goes through a great scenario here, and so I'll link that as well. Please go through this if you already have. Go through it again, build it out again, and build out these scenarios. Make sure you understand, based on business requirements, what type of data model is needed, standard versus custom objects, and what kind of relationships do these objects need to have. And you'll do great on this part of the exam. Now, the second bullet point here is, given a scenario, explain the capabilities of the various relationship types and their implications of each on record access, user interface, and reporting. Now, we really just went through a lot of this as we went through the last bullet point, just talking about the data model. We're going to walk through again these help articles and talk a little bit about record access and reporting. We're going to get a little bit more into that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and jump back into these help articles that we just went through and talk through these different options. Now, as I mentioned, the main ones that you're going to want to understand are talking about the lookup relationship and the master detail relationship. These are the most common relationships in Salesforce, particularly the lookup relationship. And again, build those out as we just went through our example in projects and understand the different settings that you can have for each. But as we go through this help article, this one here is considerations for object relationships. We want to make sure we read this, we review it, we build it out in the developer org as always. But we're just talking about the actual impact on reports that we see here is how you can actually, by relating these objects, you're able to look into fields on these now related objects. So on a custom report type that I could build, I could now build a custom report of contacts with projects. And I can look into project fields on my custom report. Please read through impacts on relationships that you see here, just to understand how, as you set up these relationship fields of lookup and master detail, and even a junction or many-to-many, how these can actually relate to your reports, these custom report types, and what you may need to do to make sure that that data is available in just one report. Because without relating these objects, I would need a contact report and a project report. But now that I've related them, we see here that we're able to look into the data of those related objects. So it's a great impact on reporting as well. And you may need to also create those custom report types to make sure that you have reports that are specifically looking for these relationships. Now, talking about the user interface, I want to talk about how these relationships, how they look in Salesforce. So here I have the project that I created. This is where the field actually was built. This field was built on the project. It was not built on the contact. So because this field was built on the project, I see here is that actual field, and here's where I can click in to go ahead and see this contact. Now, if I were to go into the contact, you're going to see here on the related lists, here's that project related list where I can now click in. So it's important to note that on this lookup relationship, the object where the field is created is going to show you that field, and you're going to be able to actually add the contact right here, right? I can change this now to Liz D. Cruz. And so that's where that's going to be. But if I go to Liz D. Cruz, That's where the related list, you're able to see related projects. So that's really important to note on just the user interface, where the lookup relationships, you're going to see it on the field, right, on the actual interface of the object you created the field, and then on the actual record that it's being looked up to, that's going to be shown as a related list. So that's going to help you understand the different relationships and how you can find these lookups just by looking on the front end of Salesforce. Relationships are extremely important. And so again, highly recommend you look through these articles, these help articles, build out in a developer org, and make sure to take your time on the test and just thinking through scenarios. Try and visualize how these objects need to relate and the different requirements that this business or scenario may have and how to address that. Custom versus standard objects, and then what types of relationships? How do I leverage a lookup relationship versus a master detail relationship? Or does this need a junction or many-to-many object? Be familiar with these and you'll do great on this part of the exam. Third bullet point is, given a scenario, determine the considerations when selecting or changing a field data type. So this is fun. This is where we talk about, if I were to initially have a number field, what can I convert that to? Maybe I need to add some text in there. So will I lose data? Can I even convert it? What will happen? And so I want to go through a few examples, but before I do that, there is a wonderful help article regarding notes on changing custom field types. So I'm going to link this again. Please read through this and understand the implications of changing field types, how and when you may lose data, and even if you can convert fields. This is a wonderful resource here. Please read through it, be familiar with it, what can potentially have data loss, and maybe, when you're not even able to convert. This is a phenomenal resource. I'll link this, be familiar with it. You'll do great on this part if you're familiar with this help article. But just to show maybe an example of that, what I want to do is I'm going to go back to our project object, and let's try to convert some, maybe create some new ones. So, if I go into my lookup relationship that I created already, I'm going to go ahead and try to edit it, and you'll see that there's now this option to change field type. Now, obviously with a relationship field, I am only really able to potentially convert it to a master detail relationship. Because these are relationship fields, I can't just change this into a text field or to a number field, right? Because these are looking up to other objects. Now, if I were to quickly create, let's say that I'm going to go ahead and create a text field, right? Let me go ahead and quickly create a text field here. And I'm going to put it as, I'll just put it as text field. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this on the object. This is just a simple text field. Now let's see what happens if I try to convert this and change the type of field that this is. So I'm going to go down here to edit, and I'm going to go to change field type. So this is great. It allows you to look through all of the different fields that you can change it to. Notice again, there's no relationship fields. You can't turn this into any relationship field. But let's say that I want to change it to a number field. You'll see this pop-up that just came up. It says changing to the selected data type will cause you to lose all existing data in this field. Really? All right, let's go for it, right? It's going to give you some warning signs and let you know what may happen. So again, recommend that you go through and understand when are you going to lose data. Again, referencing this help article here. Let me see if I want to change it to maybe a date field. Oh, there we go again. There's that same error message. But let's say maybe I want to change it to a text area field. Notice that no issue came up. A text area long, URL, but if I try to put a time in, of course it's going to have that. So really understand what type of fields, which ones are number specific, which ones are text specific. Play around with converting these fields, be familiar with which ones will have data loss and which ones you're not even able to. Again, your best resource is going to be this help article, talking through it. Even has scenarios here on the side of which ones you can and cannot convert it into. this is going to be very, very important as you're customizing and building out Salesforce. In the event that maybe you created a field but realized it should be a different field type, how are you going to do that? Should you export data, create that new field, and import into the new field, or can you convert that field into a different field type? So build out in Developer Sandbox, and make sure that you reference this help article, and you will be set on this part of the exam. Fourth bullet point is explain the capabilities and considerations of the schema builder. So I referenced this before. The schema builder, as I go into my developer org here, I'm going to type in schema. Schema builder, there's often a question on this, is really just the visual representation of objects and their relationships to one another. So I'm in my schema builder. You'll see here that I have all of these different boxes, which are different objects. I have the lead, the account, the contact, the opportunity, case, and all of these strings are showing the different relationship fields that you're able to have, right? So for example, if I were to go grab my project, you'll see that the project has that string of that lookup relationship that we created, right? It's going from the project over to the contact. This is one that we created. And so the schema builder is amazing. It's that visual representation of all of the objects and the different relationships. What's great about schema builder is you're also able to create objects and fields. So if I'm here in the schema builder, some people like to create custom objects and relationships this way just to get that visual help there. If I go to the left side here, if I go to elements, this is where I can actually drag and drop and create right here. Right here I could create, we'll call this applications. And so here is where I'm actually able to create a custom object straight from the schema builder, all of the same settings that you recall when I created the project object. I want to allow reports, activities, all of these things. And if I hit save, I will now have that application object here living in the schema builder. So here's the applications, right? If I want to also create, different lookup fields, I could also do that. I could do a lookup on the application, and it's going to ask me, okay, what's the name of this? What object do I want to relate it to? Just as I did before. And so the schema builder allows you to create objects, and it also allows you to create fields on those objects. I could put a date field here. I could put a number field here. And so the schema builder not only allows you to visualize the objects and relationships, it also allows you to create objects and fields on those objects. Now, one important help article, after you've gone through schema builder, you've clicked into it, built maybe an object and some fields there, is this great help article called Schema Builder Considerations. This is going to really help you understand what you can and cannot do from Schema Builder. For example, whenever you do create those custom fields, really the field level security is visible and edited to all internal profiles. Very important there. You saw that as I created a field, I wasn't able to set the field level security profile by profile. It's always going to be visible and read only. So make sure you look through this help article, Schema Builder Considerations, as well as, there is a great trailhead here of work with Schema Builder. It's going to help you, walk through, build a custom object, and just understand some of the considerations when you are using Schema Builder. Now on the test, really the question you'll likely see is, what tool do you use to visualize your data model or visualize the objects and their relationships one to another? Always going to be your Schema Builder. Please open up Schema Builder, build out a custom object and some relationships, and go through that help article, and you'll do just fine on this portion of the exam. The fifth and final bullet point is, given a scenario, determine the options and considerations when importing and exporting data, including the capabilities of external data sources. So talking about data import and export really isn't going to be anything new that you haven't seen on the other Salesforce exams. You really just want to understand the limitations of data import wizard versus data loader, right? Data import wizard, you have that limitation of 50,000 records and really specific objects for standard objects. Whereas data loader, you're able to really do that across all objects and really limits up to 5 million records. And so just very quickly, I'm going to go into the actual data import wizard here in my developer org. And just to show you, again, the standard objects. If I go down here to launch wizard, you'll notice here are the standard objects: accounts, contacts, leads, solutions, and campaign members. Obviously on custom objects, we're going to have my applications and projects, those that I just built. But really just know the standard objects, the one that will often come up on the test are opportunities. Opportunities is a very common standard object that is not able to be edited or imported via the data import wizard. So opportunities, you have to use the data loader. If you haven't already, I recommend that you download Data Loader. It is an external source. It's not native to your Salesforce UI. It's actually something you need to download separately and launch from your computer. And make sure that you have done some imports and maybe some exports as well via the Data Loader. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up on my screen here. Let me go ahead and launch it. So I've gone ahead and just launched my Data Loader here. Really make sure that you are familiar with it. You see here, I can insert, I can import, I can update, upsert, delete, which is a soft delete, sending it to the recycle bin, or even hard delete, as well as export and export all. If you understand the limitations of the data import wizard, you should be fine on questions talking about these tools. Again, data import wizard versus data loader. Now, the only other one that you may need to be familiar with is regarding the dataloader.io, which is really the only difference. And the thing you'll need to remember is that this is actually within Salesforce. I typed in data loader into my Salesforce. This is obviously powered by MuleSoft here. Just know that this is a native to your Salesforce application. So you have data import wizard, the dataloader.io is a part of Salesforce. Data loader without the IO is that separate application that I had to launch. Be familiar with these tools, maybe go through a few imports, some update of records, and you should be just fine on this part of the exam. Once you've gone through and understand the differences between the data import wizard, the data loader, and dataloader.io, you could search up the Workbench. It's another data management tool used by Salesforce, particularly helpful when looking at exporting data and scheduling exports. But really, it's mainly going to be the data import wizard and the data loader and dataloader.io. Just understand where you launch those and the limitations. Magic number, 50,000, and the standard objects that you can and can't do with data import wizard. Those are really everything you'll need to know, and you'll do just fine. Again, don't just memorize. Please, please, please go into developer org, get some test data, and use these tools. Get familiar with these tools. The more you build, the easier it is to visualize on the test the types of scenarios, the types of questions that you may encounter. So that'll wrap it up for this video going over the data modeling and management section of the Platform App Builder exam. Let me know if you have any questions, and always, always, always build, 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 and you'll do just fine on this section of the exam. Thanks.